We will start, sir.
Yes.
Namaste and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Bharata Mahapatra, moderator of today's webinar. Sir, the webinar is planned for 1 hour, so I request all the participants to write their questions in the chat box, and we will discuss all these questions in the question and answer session at the end. Today's topic is disruptive innovation in business. All of us have witnessed the effect of pandemic and the impact on the business. Now the companies to take a step back and analyze their current products and services, what areas can be improved, where an opportunity exists in consumer needs, and that can benefit from an innovation solution and more. Thus, disruptive innovation as something that creates new values as it uproots an existing market by introducing new or improved products or services that were not widely anticipated by the incumbent competitors. All have witnessed the disruptive innovations in recent decades and how these innovations surpassed the old innovations. This pandemic taught us the online learning platform and courses which were posed to disrupt higher education. The industry has seen plenty of innovations over the last few years when the pandemic COVID-19 entered into our life. Few examples like smartphones and their accompanying app business model disrupted laptops as the primary way consumers use the internet. Today, well over half of website visits come from mobile phones instead of desktop computers. But even more importantly, smartphones and their app marketplaces completely changed how we interact with online services and products, which gave rise to many services that did not previously exist. Just as smartphones disrupted laptops and personal computers once disrupted earlier computing predecessors like the mainframe computer. Cell phone cameras have disrupted the photography market as a whole, fundamentally redefining what it means to take a photo and who has access to this type of technology. In the light bulb industry, LEDs and CFL bulbs dramatically disrupted incandescent light bulbs. These are few examples of disruptive innovations that we came across in recent years. To discuss more on the said topic, today we have two experts with us. We are fortunate to have with us Dr. Vivek Gupta from IIM Lucknow. Dr. Gupta is presently working as an assistant professor in information technology and systems at IIM Lucknow. Before joining IIM Lucknow in May 2001, Dr. Gupta has served corporate sectors like OMC Computers Limited, HCL Technologies Limited, Ericsson HP India Limited, and government sectors like All India Radio, New Delhi through UPSC Engineering Services exam for about 14 years in various capacities at senior middle management levels. He is with the IT and Systems Group at IIM Lucknow and is involved in teaching research activities. His areas of interest in teaching and research include managing networking environment, IS, IT usage, applications, data analysis, teaching different IT subjects in few IIMs at taking subjects like IT for management, IT concept, MIS, spreadsheet modeling, and IT and process outsourcing only at IIM Lucknow and Noida. Innovation to product reality, journey of an idea in technology at Noida. Financial modeling in Excel only at IIM Rohtak. IT concepts and MIS only at IIM Jammu and Sirmaur. Dr. Gupta has quality papers published in reputed national and international journals. His research areas are in offshore software development in India, global software development, and human dimension to technology and systems. I welcome you, sir, to ASB University and to this webinar. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us today. Also, we are fortunate to have with us Mr. Uchintya Sharma. Mr. Sharma has 3 decades of technology and management experience in the domains of wireless communication, mobile internet, GPS, and smartphone platforms. His corporate experiences span both large corporates and high-tech startups. Research and Development India, headed Binatton global engineering team across 5 countries and led the mobile internet business unit at Motorola India. He has also led 2 technology startups, TrueSpan Semiconductor and Hubble Connected. As a co-founder of Oxen Consulting, he is now an independent consultant of business strategy and technology development in the area of artificial intelligence and Internet of Things. His passion is mentoring young entrepreneurs and students about making an impact through creating problem solving and social intelligence. He's a quizzer and was a semi-finalist in the BBC Mastermind TV program. He did his Bachelor of Technology from NIT Warangal and his Master's from India's Institute of Technology, Chicago. He is a Chevening Rolls-Royce Science and Innovation Leadership Fellow, University of Oxford. I welcome you, sir, to ASB University and to this webinar. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us today.
Thank you, Mahapatra. Thank you.
Now I would like to request Dr. Vivek Gupta to address this virtual gathering. Please, sir. Sir, you are muted, sir.
So what I was saying is that in every class or I am appearing in, I try to do something which I have never done before. So here it is, I'm trying to do something new. And my dear friend Uchinita Sharma is there with this very unique insight. We were together during our 4-year engineering way back in 1983 to 87, but then we charted different paths, and you will see. So let's start with, I have about 15 minutes and we'd like to have some interactions also. So let's start with now the first question is what is innovation? Right? It is in fact one of the most overused and misused terms. Now I'm not going to ask in a class setting that what is innovation and then ask for answers from everybody. So, but you can yourself take 5-10 seconds in your mind and try to, if you have pen and paper, you can write out what does a word will come to your mind, what is invention, right? And they are not the same, they are different. You can also write down what do you think, what is an invention. So invention is largely a scientific discovery, right? Whereas what is innovation? When that discovery or anything you do incremental, when it leads to some improvement in which, in the way we live our lives, right? Or conduct our business or use various products and services. If any of those products and services are improvement, whether it is in cost or it is in functionality, then it will start, we can call that as an innovation. Now, then you attach a word disruptive before that, right? Now, I think everybody knows that a Harvard professor had coined this some 25 years back. There is a theory, but I'm only saying that when that innovation, which is nothing but incremental or some improvement in which we live our lives or conduct our business, it could be cost effectiveness, right? Or product feature wise. But then when it entails a large societal behavior also starts changing because of that, then we can say that it's a disruptive innovation. Now, it is true, it has come to the fore. Why we chose this topic? Because for last 1.5 years, it has impacted each one of us. And I can see that out of the people who registered, most of them are from the academic world, right? It has impacted you, each one of us tremendously, almost all institutions. Okay, let me ask one question here. Are we in all successful at whatever age we are, whichever part of the world we are coming from, whichever course or profession we are in? Now, I'm not asking you to define what do you mean by successful, but is everybody able to answer within themselves? Are you all successful? And in the past, now success could be achieved in while graduating through certain courses or making some milestones, etc. But there is a very famous quote. I'm coming to that because if you're not careful, and it has happened to many of the companies also in the past, and you have read case studies. Most of you are teachers, most of you are students, some majority of you are research scholars. You must have read lots of cases that companies which were successful in the past, Kodak is one, Eastman Kodak, and many other, even Nokia, right? Or if you go, how did Netflix came in the being, right? Earlier age, we had video cassette, etc., which was started by Blockbuster in USA, right? 1997, they were having more than 90% of the VHS market of the world. And then, and they had a very, when people used to lend VHS cassettes, and if they were delayed, they were asking higher fines. So it was a punitive business model, and people are very, very angry, but they can't do anything because there was no other alternative. And here comes Reed Hastings, who said, I am sick of this, I'll do something different. And then he came up with Netflix, right? And once, I think I remember, if you have seen, there are 2-3 very famous cases which you must be using in your classes. Reed Hastings did go to Blockbuster CEO, and he was made to wait out in the waiting room for a very long time. The CEO didn't meet him. And he was, what Reed Hastings was telling, that you can buy us out so we can together, right? DVD mail order option here. Too great, and these small startups will not do. So that is what I'm saying. If you become too successful as an individual also, not only as an institution or a company, if you become too successful, be very, very careful about not becoming complacent. In fact, the Amazon CEO Bezos has started thinking that there is 100% certainty that one day Amazon will get disrupted, and they are beginning to figure out ways or means of how do they reinvent themselves to keep themselves successful. Now, this reinvention of a business or business model or parts of business model is true not only for companies, it is true for us as individuals, as faculty members, as students, as academic institutions. Made each one of us on a level playing field, right? Technology has, in fact, last year, I remember I was not able to take a class purely on the Wi-Fi because it was not functioning properly. Neither I was able to take a 90-minute class properly on the mobile data. But this year, even if Wi-Fi is not functional, I am able to conduct all my classes very easily on mobile data. Now, complacency will breed failure. Around about 50 years back, 1950 or 1960, the average half-life of most of the Fortune 500 companies was about how much? 60, 70, 75 years. What would be the average half-life of those companies now? It will be around 10 to 15 years. Now, that time, the CEO lifetime used to be 10 to 15 years. Now, an average CEO would last only 2 to 3 years. So they get, so much pressure is there. And now, if some of you know this phrase, only the paranoid survive. Are you aware who has said this? Anyone who can write it in the chat? Very famous book. I think 1999 or something like that it came. By this title itself, only the paranoid survive. Who has said this? One of the old successful CEO of Intel. That's the hint. Anyone? Out of the 70 to 70 odd attendees? Correct. Jasween says Andy Grove, right? And in fact, this Shahid Khan has mentioned about Christensen Clayton. Christensen was called by Andy Grove way back, I think 2010 or 11, when Christensen has came up with theory of disruptive innovation. So Andy Grove called him, said, I have just 10 minutes. You have to explain this theory to me. I'm a very busy man. And I think he didn't took 10 minutes. He took around 15 minutes. And then many things changed as far as Intel is concerned. And you can read that in lots of. So briefly, very briefly about Andy Grove. He came to US in 1956 from Hungary. He co-founded Intel along with 3 others. He was the president. 79 became CEO in 87. He was the Times Magazine Man of the Year. 1998 he stepped down. 24 years he taught. So he is also a teacher also. He was a teacher for 24 years. And I love this. People from industry, those of you who are there present in the academics world, and I am very pleased to say that Ochintya, I have been able to request him for a course, and last year we had that course along with him. So people in industry who have a lot of experience doing day in and day out what they love the most, right, and making changes, they should come back to the academics and enriching the academics. That's what Andy Grove also did for 24 years. And he came up with I'm not going to go into details of this. He said for every company, right, you must have heard a lot of S curves, right? That is there. Now, there is a point in lifetime of a company when you have to decide. So Blockbuster had that point when Reed Hastings was waiting in his waiting room. Could have done wonders, right? But they didn't choose that path. So they thought that it's a very small startup, Netflix. It is not going to impact us. Bahut chota hai, right? So little. So they just failed to react, and they just 11 years down the line, 11 or 12 years down the line, Blockbuster with more than 95% of the market declared bankruptcy, right? And there are companies who have reinvented themselves. Intel is one example. Initially, if you know that they were initially into the RAM business, then they went into the microprocessor. But then they also came to an inflection point. Whereas everything in Intel used to be talked about around mainframes. Now, anybody talking something other than mainframe was always in a minority. But then I think it helped, right? And then they changed. And then you can see that there was a time when only Microsoft and Intel were having almost more than 98 to 99% of the profits. There are hundreds of companies, right, in the late 80s or late 90s when that 97, when the PC boom came. There were hundreds of companies, software and product companies, but they had to give a share of their earnings to either Microsoft, right, or Intel, right, either hardware or software. So these two were but there were one company which challenged Microsoft. Anybody knows that name? I don't have it on slide, but I'll write it on the. Heard of this company? Intuit. Heard of this company? They had a software, I think, called QuickGen, something like that. which was a competitor to Microsoft Money. Microsoft Money was not a good product at all. And it used to come bundled free of cost. And Intuit's product was costing some $1.99, etc. And it was the only company which had that guts to compete with Microsoft at that point in time. And they are still there. If you go to visit their website, you will say this company, Scott, what's his full name? Yes, Scott. He treats every employee as an entrepreneur. It's very uncommon. Now, why? Because everyone, they have a entrepreneurial mindset within the company itself. Each one of us is an entrepreneur in that company, and they keep on visiting their customers, trying to find out the pain points and try to figure out newer ways of doing things, right? So they are always trying to figure out if there is a inflection point, what is it, which path we should take. If you are complacent, you will lose. And now I will briefly touch upon these, the link I have given. I'll just copy paste it and I'll share it with Dr. Mohapatra. He can, or just a minute, I'll see if I can share it with you right now. This is an article, short article, not a very long article. But what it is saying is that there are two focuses, right? One is technology, rapid upgradation and change is happening. And second is that applications which are getting embedded into various sector application focus is there. Now, that is what this article talks about, that sustainability for any organization, whether it is a big monolith or big organization or even NGOs, because NGOs are also, if they are not able to reinvent themselves, they'll also will just not exist beyond few years, right? So inside that blue thing is nothing but all the technology focus. Now there are energy and resource technology. There are certain items given there. You can read, I think, Dr. Mohapatra, is it readable? Energy and resources?
It's
smart grid, power storage,
not,
all technology
not exactly.
people are working on throughout the world, right? Under these four heads, new material technologies are getting worked upon, researched upon, intelligent technology, then environmental technology, and then all these things you have started hearing also: smart cities, future cities, etc., clean energy supply, and sustainable management. We already have started some, I think, 7-8 years back, our PGP in sustainable management, because that is the time, right? We have no other way to go but on this road only. And anything new, for example, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, all these are, they are starting at very low cost and it can be adopted by any person at the lower end, right? They are not meant for those customers which are already in the top bracket, right? And you would have seen that even I think last to last year, Amazon, when those yearly sales come, what you can do is just click on that link which I have just sent, Aftab Araji, the link just on the chat. So there you will see the diagram. You can, I've taken it from that link only. So last year, Amazon was giving a 50% discount on Alexa devices. But that is very common in any of the such schemes they come out. But along with that, they started giving a LED bulb free of cost, which was costing, the printed cost on that was almost about 2,000 rupees. And that was not a simple LED bulb. It could contain some million of colors, multiple colored LED bulb. And it was Wi-Fi enabled. So most of the people, so these IoT devices, they are now trying to give it. It will do people will gradually get used to that, and some of the organizations, some of the businesses will start thinking of, why can't we also make businesses around that? Now, I just broadly share with you this diagram where it talks about two types of innovation. One is sustaining innovation, one is disruptive innovation. Sustaining innovation is nothing but keep making incremental changes. For example, Kodak, they were #1 in the film, so they were keep improving the film quality, right? The ISO 400, ISO 1000 for sports, etc. But they were the first also to come up with a digital camera, but they didn't think it was a reality going to be, right? So of devices which were proprietary, and they were making a lot of money on the maps, right? And it used to be there in certain cars abroad. They were not even ready to believe that one day Google Maps or right, it is going to take away. Britannica, I remember in my school days, we used to go to library and spend time, and Britannica was such costly thing that it was in the drawing rooms of only very certain elite people. And it used to get revised only once in 3 years or 4 years. And it was pretty costly. But now I don't think Britannica sells at all. They tried in the later years, they tried converting into CD first and DVD first, but they just couldn't compete with and Blockbuster and Netflix I've already shared. Similarly, the taxi business, right? Now, you know, we already, so small incremental changes along with the technological push, which is anyway there, right? So I'll very quickly mention just 4 points. Sustaining innovation, it just satisfies customer current needs. It improves products performance based on feedback from customers. You take feedback, and it reduces defects and makes something faster and more powerful. Makes sense in short term, but can lead the company to failure. If you keep doing only sustainable improvement, you will not be able to go ahead. But whereas disruptive innovation, it satisfies customers' future needs. You have to be emphasizing what is it that the customer might be missing, right? What are the customer pain points? And lower performance in key features valued by the market. So you don't have to bother about those clients which are giving you a lot of profits. You look for the lower end of the market, right? And keep making sense for those lower end people, right? जो हम लोग कहते हैं ना pyramid के नीचे वाले, right? Start making changes in your products and services which will appeal to people at the lower end of the market, masses, right? Give them more features, right? At a lesser price and more defectless speed and power, right? So I'll just 2-3 slides more. So rate of technological innovation is changing, and everything is becoming software now. Even teaching has become software driven for last 1.5 years. There are faculty members in our institute, and I know world over, who have never ever taught other than Blackboard. And it was such a difficult time last year when the classes have to be moved over to either MS Teams or Google Meet or Zoom. We were not even aware of what is Zoom. We were at least aware of something like Google Meet. So software, everything is being now driven by software. So how can we also try to learn how to bring some of our products or services offered through software? And how do we as individuals learn newer softwares? And then how do we reimagine of everything? Classroom teaching. Can we reimagine how can we impart the best of knowledge to all our students in a different way, right? Could it be cheaper? Could it be more feature oriented, right? So, and what does it mean for your business? Now, business is not only for a big organization, it is meant for each one of us, right? What does this mean? How can you learn software or use software in trying to do what you have been always doing in your traditional ways? And how can you reimagining everything what you have been doing, right? So that's where I land. I hope it made sense.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Obviously, you have pointed differentiated the difference between the invention, innovation, and disruptive innovation. as you suggested the book like the Paradise Survive of Andrew Grove, definitely go for that. Again, you beautifully explained the sustaining innovation and disruptive innovation with some live examples. Thank you very much, sir, for your presentation and the valuable insights of this topic. Thank you very much, sir. Now, I would like to request Mr. Uchintya Sharma to address this.
Thanks, Vivek, for this wonderful introduction. And you set the context of what disruptive innovation is all about. So it makes my job easy to carry that thread. So let me try sharing my deck. Can you see this?
Yes, it's visible, sir.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to find an enthusiastic set of people on a Diwali afternoon, that too on a weekend. And I'm so thankful to ASBM for inviting me for this webinar. And it's also nice to see people from different parts of the country and maybe parts of the world attending this. And I know that it is something that you're doing as a series. So I should thank the entire management team of ASBM for taking this initiative of sharing different thoughts, bringing people together. I'm sure it's a wonderful effort that you're doing, and I'm glad to be part of it. So when Mahapatra talked about this series that he's doing and bringing a topic like disruptive innovation, see, this is a very, very huge topic. 20 minutes is not enough. You can do a full course, maybe a semester course on just one innovation. So I'll try to share some perspective and not go into the theory and other aspects of it. Try to keep it in 15, 20 minutes, and then would like to listen to all of you and what kind of questions we can have as interactions, right? So we all know that it's essentially digital technology is transforming the overall business model, right? How we were in business just a few years back is completely transformed. So what is making that transformation? So why it's happening, right? If we understand the why and how, it's sometimes easy to then reflect on the larger impacts and then make some contribution to that ourselves. So first thing is what I call malleability. Malleability is a word that you would have heard in chemistry, high school chemistry, about metals. That metals are ductile and malleable, we say. Malleable means something that you can change shape very quickly. You can make it into a long, something like this, you can turn it around. And this is what is happening with an example, the music industry. Right? Once upon a time, music industry was just about listening to records or then cassettes or listening to on the radio. But do we do any of those things now? Right? Music is now consumed very, very differently. The way music is produced, once upon a time, music was only with movies, at least especially in India, or in the West, it was on these albums and records. Now music can be produced anywhere by anybody. It's consumed very differently. We actually don't know who pays for music anymore, right? I don't think any of you ever remember in the recent past of having paid even 1 rupee to listen to a song. So this kind of almost undetectable, you can't even know what shape music industry is taking. So this is, and the same thing you can take about the hospitality industry, you can look at the banking industry, you can look at transport industry. All these industries are changing the shapes and form very, very dramatically. That is one aspect of how digital transformation is happening. The second interesting thing is what is called disintermediation. What digital technology is doing is cutting out the middlemen, right? A good example is farm produce. Once upon a time, there's not actually once upon a time, not too long ago, or even in some parts of India even now, or most parts of India even now, that you have produced, then it goes through a series of middlemen, right? And then that's how it reaches our home. And each of that middleman either does some value addition or very little actually, other than increasing the cost, but some amount of maybe transport and aggregation happens. But you have now business models where you have directly what they call farm to the curb, farm to home. All of these things are possible. Now that includes, when I just say farm, it's not just farm, it's include dairy products, poultry products, even horticulture, the way flowers, fruits, all of these things reach us. There is tremendous amount of disruption happening here. It's also ironic in that some other industries, middlemen have come in, and that is also disruption. A good example is Zomato. Okay, you used to go to a restaurant and eat directly. Now there is a intermediary who has come in, right? And you order through Zomato or you order through Swiggy. So that's another disruption which is impacting us big time. Now this is all possible in a way because technology is now much more democratic. Now Vivek talked about companies like Intel, Microsoft. I have worked in large companies, Motorola, Samsung. Now once you had these kind of companies, these companies controlled for different reasons, for intellectual property, for the business interest, many tools and techniques, and these were all internal to the company. But you may have noticed that in recent times, through open source foundations, or even otherwise, the association of academia, especially, right, where a lot of innovation is happening in the academic world, and these are getting field distributed, that access to technology is extremely democratized. And artificial intelligence is a good example. Sitting in a college dormitory, doing wonders because they have access to all the tools, they have access to models, they have access to, this GPU farm, they have this CPU, cloud servers, whatever. They can sit, they don't need to buy any of those things. They can just rent them or sometimes even get them free. So the big companies are completely threatened, right? Because you have now democratized completely. In some areas, this democracy of technology is so rampant. Now it's especially post-pandemic, even access is so much that it actually doesn't matter. You could be in Koraput, you could be in Kohima, you could be in Kansas and do exactly the same thing. As long as you have internet bandwidth, you're same. People don't even need to know. We don't know who these, all the participants that we have today, close to 100, I don't know from who, they may not even know where I am sitting right now, right? So to this the flat world, and especially in the case of high technology, high tech, what was once upon a time called high tech, now has become almost, I would say, like a democratic tech. The fourth thing that has happened, which I find it very fascinating, is the reality of what once upon a time was envisioned as a great engineering principle of modularity and recombination. A good example is the Internet of Things. You have now basic modules, like you have the sensors, then you have the communication framework, then you have some security modules, then you have the cloud service, then you have the smartphone application. So essentially, these are the 5-6 building blocks of the IoT world, right? Now, these things, let's say a young entrepreneur decided to do something for industrial automation, and overnight he finds a new opportunity in medical automation, or goes into some agricultural IoT. Many of these blocks are still valid. Okay, maybe the end analytics or what you do with the actual data that may require different kind of modeling. But some of a LoRa module or Wi-Fi module, a module that puts in security, the MQTT stack, or many other such kind of things are all almost kind of plug and play. Now this has made reaction time to business very, very low. So people can stitch together technology very quickly. So these 4 things, in my opinion, are causing this disruption to happen at a very, very fast rate. Now, of course, just so that we are all in sync with what this disruptive thing is all about, so I just thought, in the slide, many of you are already aware, people in the business, especially in the academia, you would have taught this, Clayton Christensen's model of disruptive innovation. So what it says, just for a minute, that you have a trajectory of growth of features and performance, which every product goes through, right? A smartphone becomes better and better, the screen becomes bigger, the power becomes more, the battery becomes heavier, all that keeps on happening. But at some point of time, it actually exceeds the actual requirement of the customer. Right? You keep on satisfying customers one by one with different kind of features, and then you find, actually you don't know, but essentially the customers don't need that. They need the screen size of only this much, right? But you have given them this big. And that is the time to be most worried about, because that is where somebody else will come completely in a different trajectory, will give only that much that a customer needs. So, and optimize everything else. So the cost may come down, the power may come down, something else will come down. It may look different. And the other first product, which was going through its huge inner trajectory of business, suddenly doesn't have the wherewithal to correct, and goes through this curve that Vivek showed, and it just rolls down. And the new company like Netflix or somebody else, like all these cell phone manufacturers that you see coming from wherever they can, take over business. So I don't want to spend much time, but it is very important that if you don't pay attention and we just keep on doing what we're doing, even if it's good, and the other guy will just come and eat your market from below. Right? This is the basic thing about disruption. Now, so I just thought that for us to appreciate this thing in a larger context, I'm just bringing this concept called the innovation wheel, right? Maybe a little bigger version of this. Now, we always think that when you have to do innovation, we always look at what? Okay, let's say there's a cell phone. What are the more features that we can add? Or improve performance? But that is only on the right side. See the orange, not the orange, the yellowish thing on the right, that's product, systems, and performance. But essentially, innovation can be done in so many different other ways. And this is where the disruptions normally come from. A good example is, let's say, because Vivek took the example of Amazon, let's stay on that. Amazon brought this concept of Kindle and ebooks, right? People started getting books in a completely new way. Throughout history, people have been reading books through paper in a certain way. Now, but what has Amazon done? It has not brought in a new book. Shakespeare is Shakespeare, Milton is Milton. What it has done is brought in a different channel. And all they have done is innovation on the channel. Now you're receiving it in a different way. So that's one area. This other way, I'll just give you another example of making maybe a process change. The process change is not even seen to the customer. It could be very internal to the organization. Yet it can have an impact on the revenue. It can have an impact on the bottom line in terms of profitability. It can have an impact on the total number of customers. So all these changes may happen. That itself can be very disruptive innovation. So innovation can happen in the way we configure things. Innovation can be provided in the form of different user experience, apart from the normal offerings that we do. So this is a very, very powerful thought that we should keep to ourselves as in our mind, that when we look at disruption, let us think from all possible ways, right? We can take different examples, like for example, network. Now, I will talk about a little more about networking in just a while. The example that we talked about with Blockbuster and Netflix coming together. Now, if both of them would have come together, it would have been an innovation in networking, right? Because one had thought of the DVD, other guy had already the channel. So all they needed to do was get together, right? And that would have been a very, very strong disruption. Most of the time, serious innovations have happened in the history of business by innovation, disruption can come in, is in terms of structure. Now, we normally don't relate structure of a business to innovation, right? But bringing in new talent, bringing in new assets, maybe going for a new geographical expansion, okay? You can create a completely new different disruption. We talk about Africa as a growing market, right? Many a time you would find that some things which we do in India very easily migrates to Southeast Asia or Africa. It's also an Indian mindset that many a time we do compare with the West, Europe, and the Western economies or North America. But if we can think of other areas, other geographies, which have similar kind of behaviors and customer behaviors, maybe you will find that you can go and disrupt in that place because something else is going on, and all we did was a geographical migration of a technology or a service. So you can do disruption in those ways as well. There are so many ways in which money can be made, of course, in business. But in the last few years, you would have noticed very almost counterintuitive things. I'll share an example. Okay, few years till recently, I had my own phone, and then another number, 2 numbers. Then I had to pay for my son's cell phone. Then I had a Tata Sky service. Then of course, and I had a broadband. So I looked at the monthly bill. It used to be about 3,000 kind of plus 3,000. Now, of course, because all these are now mandatory things. I need my phone. I need my broadband. I need my Tata Sky service. I continued. So one fine morning, Airtel came to my neighborhood. They didn't even ask us. They didn't even ask me. They drew a fiber line all the way to my house, free. Okay, and they said, "We'll give you this box, everything. You don't even have to think. Within 4 hours, you'll be up and running." And 3 numbers attached to that with Airtel Extreme connection and a broadband service. And my monthly bill was 2,499. So it was impossible to explain to somebody that I have now better bandwidth. I have more phones connected. I have a better service of Sky TV, yet I'm paying less. No, it is completely counterintuitive business. So who is paying for all that? So then you can make money by subscription. You may have pay-per-view. All of these models, you can cause disruption. You can look at the business of food experiences, right? People buy food, and young kids are very good at that, right? So my son is an expert in ordering from Swiggy. So he will say that if I, instead of buying from 1 phone, if I buy from 2 phones, okay, I'll get a better deal. I could never understand this. This is beyond economics. He said, okay, 1 man, if he comes for me, that is efficient. He'll say, no. If 2 people come, okay, it is cheaper for me. Now, God knows, right? So somebody is somewhere making money somewhere. So as we go into this new age of disruptive economy, we should look at this innovation wheel and look at all the different areas in which we can innovate. So I just want to end my talk with something that I for a long time I have been believing in what actually caused. Okay, so this example that I'm giving you is about disruption that has happened billions of years ago, maybe, and perhaps the greatest disruption ever. That is the formation of life. Okay, world would have just continued as it is, but suddenly somewhere when disruption happened and life came up, right? And what actually happened, and this is a concept called symbiogenesis. Somewhere in the early 20th century, this person called Konstantin Menchowski came up with this concept. Now it's been, there's this lady called Lynn Margulis. I'll show you the picture later. She's the major proponent of that. So what this theory says that, sometime, somewhere, this cyanobacteria, original basic bacteria, cyanobacteria, and some protozoa got together. They joined and formed chloroplasts. So that's how the plant kingdom started. Okay, and again, somewhere down the line, some prokaryotic cell again combined with some protobacteria and formed what is called the mitochondria, which is the, all of you may be knowing, mitochondria is the powerhouse of our cells, right? So that's on the left is Menchowski and the right is Lynn Margulis. Now, what it means is this, that completely two different ecosystems came together, right, and formed life. Now, I'm not an evolutionary biologist, so I don't know much details about this, but for me, what is fascinating is its relation to economics. That if you take an ecosystem, a business ecosystem by itself, it can have only this much future. But if you take another business ecosystem and combine the two, you have completely new life, right? This is what history of life has shown us. Just give you an example, right? The movie industry was almost dead. All of us know we stopped growing in the movie industry. But then at some point of time, these malls and such kind of retail industry started coming together and people started visiting malls. And people realized that by merging the two, by having multiplexes and making movie experiences as like a mall going experience, the movie industry boomed back again, right? It's just it was a completely disconnected ecosystem. We would have never connected the movie industry with the retail industry. But these two completely unconnected systems came together and gave a new life of innovation, right? The same thing about, example is that about GPS, right? I was in the GPS industry from 1993, and we were making Garmin and those kind of systems. And we never thought of anything else, just make chips, put them in a box, put them with maps, all kinds of things. It was the industry going all by itself. And this phone was for what? For making phone calls, receiving SMSs, all kinds of stuff. Now, suddenly these two things came together. And the equation was not 2 + 2, but 2 + 2 into 2 into 2, 2 squared, 2 cubed, 2 to the power of 100 maybe, right? So my view is that as innovators, if we can think of the ecosystem that we are in and we are comfortable, then we reach out and see what other ecosystems are in a different adjacent or sometimes non-adjacent systems, and they come together, you'll have a very, very powerful disruptive world. So my question to all of us is, let's think of, in the next 2 years, 3 years, what are the two ecosystems, business ecosystems we think can come together and create a disruption that will stay for the next 15, 20 years. So that's how I want to end my talk. Thank you again. It was my pleasure to interact with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your impressive presentation with valid and interesting examples. You have beautifully explained about how digital technology is transforming the business model, the theory of disruptive innovations, and also the which one is the very informative, that is the innovation wheel. So thank you very much, sir. And I request all the participants that we have shared the feedback link in the chat box. Please share your views and suggestions to improve our future webinars. Now coming to the question answer session, we have received few questions from the participants. I'll read the valid one, something like Dr. S. Kavita asked one question.
The link,
Yes.
feedback link has not been received, I think. It's not given to
Okay.
everyone.
Okay.
Just check.
Okay, sir, the team is sending right now.
And there is one raised hand also by.
Okay, we will answer the question first. Then whatever the questions asked while filling the registration form, we'll go for that. Okay, no sir. And we will first go to the question. So there's a question from Sahid Khan. How can innovation be inclusive? Dr. Gupta, will you take these questions?
If Shahid Khan is there, we can ask him to unmute and just try to describe what is he meaning about inclusive, innovation being inclusive. Mr. Shahid, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, sure, sir. Thank you, Doc. And my only, ask over here is something very simple, because most of the times we realize that when we speak about innovation and its management, it's not about it's about the fact that not all innovations actually go to the grind and actually become something. And a good number of times we have actually seen that whatever has been innovative sometimes gets actually stored up into the, as we say, into the deep freezer also. Not all innovations come out. And how can we make these innovations? Like, for example, the digitization in India, of course, it can be a massive, massive debate from the financial point of view. We always believe that it has brought in a lot of financial inclusion. So I'm talking in terms of that, Dr. Gupta. How can we bring about inclusivity when we speak about innovation? If at all we have achieved a digital innovation in India, that we all talk about UPI, BMAP and all that stuff, how can that happen is my question. Thank you, Dr. Gupta. And thank you, Professor Mohapatra.
Do you think anybody is left out? If you have a question on inclusivity, are you, I'm just rephrasing the question, asking you whether you think anybody is left out, because now even my milkman says that don't pay me cash.
Rightly said, Prof. At least in the financial inclusion part, I think more and more of us are getting included. Even the Nariyal Pani Wala who's on the street says, pay me by Paytm,
And
thank you, Prof.
What I think is, one is that fear of technology, which had kept all these IT companies making their money for years together, right? The ignorance, because sheer amount of ignorance was there in the large population. So all these big IT companies made a lot of money in the initial late 80s and 90s by selling boxes, right? The price of the original product might be 1 lakh, but they have sold the products for 30 lakhs. So because of the ignorance, they were trying to use that. But now I think everybody is becoming very literate, even though a person is not having degrees so as to speak, but they have learned how to use. And I think the technological push by various companies that okay, so the technological push, for example, the latest Geo phone which has been launched, it can now translate into n number of languages. So that problem that a phone needs one to know English specifically is also taken away. Right. So I don't know whether I have answered your question or not, but it is fast becoming inclusive, because innovation has to be inclusive. I think you cannot decide that these 5 people are responsible for bringing in innovation in this company. It has to be every single member of the organization, whether it is a company or it is an academic institution. Each student, each research scholar, each faculty member, each staff member should be given enough freedom to think of a new version of their institution. Are we currently doing so? I don't think we are doing so. We think that somebody at the top level or the top administration will be thinking of what we will be in 10 years time, 20 years time, unless and until each one of us, even the youngest person who joins. In fact, I am remembering a quote where I think the Apple chairman had said that we recruit smart people not to tell them what to do. We recruit smart people to tell us what to do. So what I'll say is, current generation, whenever any new recruit, whether in an academic institution or any company, they should be the one left to decide the future of the company or the department for the next 6 months, because they are coming from the outside world. They should be given freedom to tell their bosses that this is not right, we should be doing these things. But I don't know whether that culture is there or not as of now. But that should be made. So I don't know whether I have answered that question or not.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, another question by Dr. Mohammad Jahangir Ali. How to control the plagiarism with the help of technology, and what type of technology we can use in the college and universities during the conducting of examinations? Sir, will you take this question again, sir? It's related to university and college, sir.
See, we should not leave it to somebody else to police us. I keep telling my students, I'm not here to police you. In the first 2 years, when I joined the institute in 2001, for 2-3 years, I used to catch students doing some cheating, right? But then I said, ki, it's your life, right? It's your choice. Whether you are stopping at a red light, right? The red traffic light, right? There is a traffic junction and you are stopping at when the red light is there, or you are just going past. If there is no traffic policeman, you are not stopping. So that's a choice which you make. So why do you need somebody else to put a check on you that whether you are plagiarizing or not? You know it is not correct. You are very much aware, right? Now you don't need anybody else to check on that. There are tools and softwares on that. But I would say that the more each one of us become more conscious of that fact that we are going to do this job to the best of our ability and in the right way, only then it is possible. Otherwise, nobody can police each person. With the advent of every information available on the net, anybody can copy paste and come up with something, but they are cheating themselves. They are not cheating any institution or any faculty member. Anything, Ochintya, you would like to say?
No, it's okay. I think you answered exactly.
Sir, no more questions in the chat box, but we have few filling the registration form. One question by Dr. Kavita asking about the impact of disruptive innovation in SMEs and how they have to prepare themselves to convert the challenges into opportunities. Ochintya sir, would you like to take this question?
Is the participant present? Because
Dr. S. Kavita,
if you are there, you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
yes, yes.
Hello?
Please.
Yeah. Sir, I was just asking because we know there are a lot of disruptive innovations are happening, and SMEs, the small mid enterprises are there. No, SMEs, how they are affected, and can we give some like how they can what way they can convert all the challenges that they may get it through convert that as opportunity. So that is what my question for SMEs, small and mid-sized enterprises. I hope I'm clear, right? Yeah, yes, sir.
Thank you, Kavita. So,
Yeah.
in fact, I think that any SME or any agile kind of company is well placed to cause disruption. In fact, all that we're saying that it is the large companies that should fear, because technology is now available to you at much, as I said, in a much democratic way. Technology is available to you at much cheaper way. These days, you don't have to buy large capital servers and all that. You can, most of it is available in OPEX. So, in fact, SMEs today and small startups are the ones where maximum innovation is happening. In fact, most of innovation is happening there, right? So while doing that, you also need to protect, for example, your IP protection things. You have to be very clear. Whatever work you do, ensure that they are copyrighted, they are trademarked, they are patented. So those kind of protections you need to do, and be very aggressive, very quick, because that is the advantage of an SME. You don't need too many decision makers to decide. Your decisions are made in the same, maybe in the same office, in the same house. You don't have to go to some corporate place in the US or Japan, which is why big companies take time to make decisions, whereas smaller companies can make those decisions very quickly. And if you see an opportunity, you can go after it faster. The other advantage that SMEs have is understanding the customer, right? Because you are closer to the customer, you understand exactly what the customers need. And that's a huge, huge advantage. See, knowing the customer is perhaps the only and the beginning, right? So after that, you figure out that I have these things to do. You can prioritize better. You can go back to the customer and check that of the 10 things that I heard, if I do 3 things, will it satisfy you? So these kind of engagement with the customer is much more easily done in an SME. And I'm sure you're doing that as well. So I would think that because I have personally been in startups, I like the startup culture much more. And although even in big companies, I have always tried to operate in the startup mode. So I feel that you have a great opportunity. One, because you have now access much easily, and second, your connection with the customer is much more stronger.
Thank you very much, sir. Another question from Mr. Patrick. Creative from innovation and destructive innovation. How good or bad is destructive innovation? Vivek sir, would you like to take this question? Patrick sir, you there, sir?
We should take questions by those who are present.
Yes, sir. Patrick sir is here. Hello. Okay, Mr. Rajiv Gupta. You can put the question here. Can you hear us? Mr. Rajiv Gupta.
He's there, but he's not there.
Okay, Mr. Sahid Khan. I think you have a question.
There's some people who have raised their hands also, huh?
Yes, please put the question directly to
Dr.
our
Gupta,
resource person.
Dr. Ghoshal
Sir, I
has-
did ask the question, sir. I'm still online. I think it was answered by Dr. Gupta. Yes.
Dr.
Okay, he's
Ghoshal
already
has
answered.
raised the hand. Dr. Ghoshal has raised the hand.
Okay, you just unmute and directly ask the question to the panel members. I request our participants to unmute and directly ask the questions to our panel members.
Yeah, I think Dr. Malai.
Ghoshal. Good evening, sir. Hello.
Yes, please.
Good
Good
evening.
evening, sir. So my question is, whenever you talk about innovation and that too disruptive innovation, we used to give the example of information technology and to be particularly or to be specific, that to smartphone. Fine. Why don't you think out of box? Sir, the time has come when the dolls become more costlier than the data, or data become cheaper than the doll. Fine. We're able to produce what is called the chips, what is called that computer chips, but we are not able to produce what is called the potato chips. Fine. So the basic sectors, what I want to say, that is the agricultural field, the education field, the health field, we are not about to what is called to talk about that. And that field is totally untouched by the businessman. So my question is that, don't you think the businessmen should think about the agricultural field to make our life more and more easy, to health sector, to improve our health also, and also the education sector. The paradox in education sector is that, sir, we prefer to what is called to give admission of our son or our child for basic education in private sector and for higher education in government sector. So that paradox is there. So something flaws is there in education sector also. So I think we should think about that. And innovation is required in this untouched field where there is a lots of scopes are there and which actually can make our life more and more easy. And being a teacher, I don't support, sir, that smartphone culture and all that. I don't believe that smartphone is going to replace the classroom environment, the ambience, the touch point, the interaction with the students, the impromptu, what is called the presentation, the role play. You cannot replace with all this stuff with the help of that smartphone and the apps. So these are the one type of what I personally feel. And I think we should focus more and more innovation in this basic to improve the basic necessity of our life. So that is my question, sir. I think you're getting what I want to say.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
I think I can respond to that. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So, as much as you think of this education field, healthcare, to maybe even industries like tourism, hospitality, almost everything is going through disruption, right? I can give you my personal examples. First, let me clarify. I think you're right that, and I think all of us agree that you cannot replace a teacher by a smartphone. Obviously not. Like, nor can you replace a nurse with a smartphone. Nor can you replace a doctor or a banker or any of these things. Human beings are there. We bring in certain emotional value. So obviously we have to remain. So it is just like, the technology is a tool, it is not the human being, right? No matter what we do, artificial intelligence, IoT, whatever, and I've been in these technologies for long, we all believe that this is a tool, just like a computer keyboard, right? Once upon a time, you used to write in a paper, now you type. So that's the same example. That doesn't make you a writer. You still have to write, you have to still think and write, but a computer doesn't make you a writer. So I think to imagine that a teacher will be replaced by a smartphone is, I would say, almost ridiculous. It will never happen, or should not happen, rather, because there is certain value that a parent brings in, a certain value that a principal brings in, a physical instructor brings in, friends bring in. Children should meet, play, fall, dance. All that should happen. That does not happen in the virtual world. So obviously, that is not the world how we will live in. But today the examples that we have taken were examples that all of us can relate to. So maybe those are the examples. But speaking of, let's say, agriculture, there's so much of innovation happening, and has nothing to do with smartphone. The amount of innovation that's happening in the way irrigation is done, the amount of innovation that's happening in the way produce is understood, and the entire supply chain is managed. The kind of innovation that's happening in seeding, if you're aware of hydroponics, aquaponics, these are great innovations that's happening, right? So agriculture is in fact going through a major, I would say, innovation swing. Same things happening with tourism, adventure tourism, all kinds of things are happening there. Hospitality industry is changing. Healthcare, though, we all know, all the way from drug discovery to pharmaceutical to actual care, hospital care, they are going through. In fact, that's the area where maximum amount of innovation is happening. In fact, people are saying this is the what you call century of biology, right? Physics, chemistry is over. This is where the human being will become number one. So obviously, I do talk about, that it's not Internet of Things, it's Internet of Beings. So the being is more important. So we all understand that, and it's important that we talk about it like you did, that human beings do matter in this world, nothing else.
Thank you very much, sir. I request all the participants to ask the questions directly. Please unmute. I think Dr. Mohammad Jahangir Ali has a question.
It's not a question. I think it's an observation, and I just wrote him one small response that this documentary, which if you have not watched, right, this David Attenborough, A Life on Our Planet, it was released about 4 to 6 months back, and it's a 1 hour 40 minutes documentary. I think it's on Netflix. And it says, he says that because all his life, David Attenborough, right from 37 when he was born, he has seen this world in up and close, right? So first half of that documentary, almost an hour, he figures out how human beings have done damages to air, water, and land. But then the beautiful part starts after that. I was very sad at the middle part of the documentary, but then it goes about answering as if Dr. Mohammed Jahangir sir, ki how innovators are tackling the global warming. Even though our leaders might not be doing it, but it has started happening at a very local level around the world. So last 40 minutes of this documentary, in fact, this documentary should be an essential watch in all the schools as well.
Okay, Vivek, I want to give a personal example because it's about agriculture where we have used, I have been part of a project where we have realized that because of climate change, cattle fodder is becoming shortage of cattle fodder in a place called Majuli in Assam. And what we have done is using hydroponic technology, built some cattle fodder stations. So, which I think is quite a disruption because now you can get cattle fodder in some few weeks and not wait for the rains to come. So it is definitely good innovation can be applied to solve these kind of issues. And it's up to us how to do it. I think there's few more raised hands. Or no?
Any more questions from our participants? I think no question.
Already 5:20.
I don't see any raised hands.
Okay, sir. So today we discussed on the topic disruptive innovation. This platform is one disruptive innovation as people from different parts of the world, and we are together and discussing on a topic. So with beautiful features and facilities. So obviously, this disruptive innovation is making our life easy and comfortable with low cost and risk. Thank you very much, sir. Now coming to the end part of the webinar, that is I just want to propose the vote of thanks. Mr. Ochintya Sharma for their presence and impressive speech on this topic. Thank you very much, sir, for accepting our invitation to grace this occasion. I must convey my special thanks to our President and Founder, Professor Biswajit Patnaik, Vice Chancellor, Professor Kalyan Shankar Ray, and Pro-Vice Chancellor, Professor Falgu Niranjana, for their constant support and standing behind us to make this program a success one. I convey my thanks to the webinar team for their support and to make this event true. Last but not the least, I convey my thanks to all the participants for their cooperation and patience hearing. Thank you very much to all the participants. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, ASBM. Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you, Ochintya. Namaskar.